Okay, welcome to our first edition of The Couch. And the idea of The Couch is to be talking to really clever experts while they're on their couch. And I'm coming to you from the Salted Stone couch right here. But because of the current situation, we can't both be on the same couch. So on his couch, joining me for our first episode is Dave Levett from Murmur. Dave, thanks for joining us on a lovely couch too.
No worries, thank you, Tony. Thank you for having me. You've got a nice little brown couch there. I've gone with the white couch, staying on Murmur brand.
Well, yeah, you're one step ahead of me. Like you're actually getting branding happening even while we're in isolation, which is awesome.
We've both worn branded shirts as well, without any planning on that as well.
That's right. Anyone think we may have organised this and we haven't?
That was completely random. Yeah.
Completely random. So, Dave, let's start off with, if you can tell us a little bit about Murmur, the team size for those that don't know about the wonderful company that you have. Mm-hmm. What type of industries of clients do you have?
Yeah, we're a marketing agency. We started in 2016 in Sydney. I spent 4 years or so working at B-Sky-B in London. Learned a huge amount over there in terms of my knowledge around marketing, and then moved back to Sydney in 2016 and started Murmur. And we've now got 5 staff. We've got 3 staff that help run our media activity. So we'll run a lot of our clients' digital media execution. We've got a designer that helps run a lot of our creative and campaign, branding and design work for our clients. And I've got a senior account manager who works with me on marketing strategy. So working with our clients on understanding their audience, their segmentation, their positioning, how they should go to market in terms of targeting. So we help run qual focus groups, quant surveys and things like that. So we're a decent size. We're based in Darlinghurst in Sydney, so very close to the hub of where it all happens. But with COVID-19, we've kind of infiltrated Sydney, and we've now got 6 offices set up all across this great city. I'm currently in our Dural office. I've also got teams in Fairfield, Liverpool, Lane Cove, Gladesville. We're covering some decent geographic areas.
So you've continued even with the expansion during COVID-19 by opening up these branches.
Absolutely.
Next is good.
Franchising them, but absolutely. We're just we're finding it interesting working from home, and it's when you have the Friday wind down and you've got everyone together, it's just great to hear about everyone's stories and what's been happening in our local hood. And we've got a work from home Tuesday takeover that someone has every day, so we can all try and feel connected to where everyone is. And I think that's been one of the challenges at the moment is the collaboration within the team. So knowing what everyone's up to without being able to talk to them across the partition and things like that. So that Tuesday takeover has been pretty good. You'll have to jump onto our socials, Tony. I had mine yesterday and I went to town on it.
Well, mate, you were one of the very early adopters, I think, of going virtual, because you did do the shared Spotify channel, which we all did jump on. We probably rejected all our music, but we certainly tried to collaborate without a shared Spotify channel, which was good. But anyway, let's talk about paid media, especially so one of the big things I think that people are feeling right now, with the COVID-19 restrictions is, do I cut my marketing budget? Do I reduce my marketing budget? So I wanted to just deep dive a little bit into the current channels, because you pretty much work across all of them, from the Google platform to social platforms like LinkedIn and Facebook. In this current climate, what would you say is working well out of those platforms, in particularly for your clients and what you're seeing for yourself?
I would say don't necessarily look at the platforms that are going to work well in this current climate. I think it's the activity that clients and brands should be focusing on now that is important. The platforms will be there and they will do their job. And I think obviously with more people at home, we're seeing a higher engagement on a lot of those digital platforms. Funnily enough as well, desktop is now starting to outperform mobile. I think generally because everyone's working at home now and spending more time at home on the desktop, we're seeing a lot more desktop interactivity. So previously where mobile usage was going through the roof, desktop's now kind of catching up to it. But marketers will never be given another chance like this at all. What we're working through at the moment is unprecedented, and we're never going to be able to conduct a factory reset, I call. You get something stuffs up at your computer and you go and reformat the whole drive and start again. We'll never be given that opportunity. And I think the next 90 days is crucial for a lot of brands. And a lot of brands that we're talking to is really about honing in on what is that strategy. Because the platforms is really around about the execution. The time now is to start looking at not only your short-term execution, but really your long-term strategy and brand building. I think some of the best platforms that you can use, Facebook is still giving a really great return, but instead of conversion, you might be driving engagement. So one of the things that we would always work with our clients on is measuring the platform success against your brand objectives. And again, that comes down to strategy. So I think the next 90 to 120 days is a perfect opportunity for brands to get out there and get your audience research. Qualitative research is going to be hard to find, but it can be there. You just have to go and speak to your fans, your customers, and things like that. Get that secondary research done, extrapolate those findings through point research. So there's absolutely no reason why you can't be sending out surveys to all of your customers, getting your NPS in order, understanding your segments, building that market up, valuing the market so that when everything returns back to normal, then you're able to ramp up the activity that you've got planned. And that's really then when you can start looking at what platforms are using. But so I would say, and we can talk about the platforms itself, but I would say the activity that clients should be focusing on now it should definitely be much more strategic than executional as well.
It's interesting you pick on strategy. I just before we came on this call, I did hosted a webinar for a bunch of folks at the Sydney Hills Business Chamber, and we ran a poll live, for the 100 or so that were on the call, all generally small businesses, and said to the guys, there was about 5 or 6 options. What are the 3 things that you would need support with right now during this thing? Number 1 was marketing. Mm-hmm. Because folks, and like we're doing this couch thing today, is how do I market in such uncertain times? Second was strategy, and the third was financial, because obviously financial is important. But it just highlighted to me that this is an opportunity to really strategically think about how is your business pivoting itself now through the crisis, but also how will it look after the crisis? Yep. Because if you do what, and I know some businesses are thinking about, is in uncertain times, let's just cut everything. Let's just go back to nothing. Turn the lights off, shut the doors, or whatever. It's probably the worst thing you to do in history. I think through the war and through other crises, it's been the worst thing to do. How do you feel though that this is also, while businesses are cutting back, it's also an opportunity for businesses to spend more?
Now is the only time to invest more. You've got to, and we've had clients that have cut back everything. But what was really funny is about that started to have those conversations started having around the mid to late March, and just this week, every client of ours, bar one, has come back to us saying, "Let's restart everything again in May." Why is the best time to invest now? There's 2 things here. The first is there is a direct correlation between share of voice and your share of market. The share of voice is essentially how much media are you spending, how much is your brand getting out there in front of your consumers, and share of market is your market share. We know that there is a direct correlation. The IPA in the UK has actually released a bit of research on this. I believe Les Bennett and Peter Field wrote something, and when your share of voice is greater than your share of market, so when you're spending more than your competitors and against what your market share actually is, those brands tend to grow. And consequently, when your share of voice is less than your share of market, those brands need to shrink or tend to shrink. So the equilibrium is obviously making sure that your share of voice is greater than your share of market. Now, at the moment, with a bunch of brands cutting back on their marketing spend, the only thing smart marketers will be doing is actually looking at ways to think about how can I get in front of my customer? Because the customers are still there. Even though we're in isolation and in lockdown, it's about generating awareness. So that's the first point. The second point is around what's generally known as the 60-40 rule. And if you look at that research that the IPA released in the UK, Les Bennett and Peter Field, it highlights the importance of investing in both short-term sales-focused marketing and longer-term brand-building activity. And they reckon that the perfect split is 60-40 amongst there. 60% focused on your brand and building your brand, and 40% on short-term activation. So the second thing I would say is you should be doing brand activity. Build the brand up. Make sure that your brand activity is head and shoulders and the best that it can be, so that when the time comes for short-term activation, when the lights get turned back on, your brand is top of mind. So the first thing is share of voice. Make sure your share of voice is greater than your share of market, and make sure that your budget split is generally split between that 60-40.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important thing that you say about the 60, because most people are thinking like in any kind of crisis, you kind of think about almost like a desperation mode. It's kind of like I need my paid media and my advertising to work, almost like back to the old school where you'd run a TV ad and expect the phones to ring straight away, and they lose that strategic approach. They lose the brand stuff, and I know I spoke about the war stuff before, but anybody on this call can look back on it, and brands that continued to market through crisis like we're going through were the ones that became the leaders at the end, because people felt they were still front of mind. Wherever they were, they could see that their brands were with them through the tough times as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's a critical point that you point out there. I just want to just touch on content, because again, people I think struggle with, how do I put content out there? Like branding is one thing. Obviously, you can brand yourself in terms of, this is why we're here, this is what we do. But how should people sort of even adjust their content in current crisis times, so they don't look like they're, trying to sell something or trying to promote themselves in a time where people are probably being a little bit more restrictive and compassionate?
Yep. I think the main thing that will change with content is the themes and topics that you talk about. So we work with a number of brands on content strategy. Harking back to what I said before, strategy, the reason why a lot of brands get strategy wrong is because they don't have the time for it. They're working on short-term activation. How do we reach this quarter's sales? How do we reach this month's sales? How do we get to this week's sales without necessarily thinking about what does the next 12 months look like? And I think the advantage of the time now is that you have the time as a marketer to sit back and actually plan your strategy out there. Same as content strategy. And content strategy is a subset of your brand strategy. So when we run content strategy workshops with clients, we talk about the three O's. And the three O's are brand objectives, marketing objectives, and comms objectives. And these shouldn't have changed during COVID-19. So brand objectives, what does the brand or business need to do? And we start with that because it's the most important thing a brand has to ask themselves, as well as a marketer. And the first reason why marketing budget's always cut is because we're off doing something else that doesn't line up towards the business objectives. So make sure your business objectives are in point. Make sure you've got your marketing objectives in there, and finally your communication objectives. So what do you want to achieve? The second part of content strategy is around audience. So that's where you start looking at your audience breakdown, your segmentation, your demographics, psychographics, triggers and barriers, your brand tone of voice, and things like that. And then we start talking about what we call the 3 T's with content. And the 3 T's are essentially themes, topics, and type. And themes is generally what interests do I have with my audience? And once you've done the first 2 phases of the content strategy, you'll have a really, really tight understanding of your audience, and you'll be able to know what those themes are. The second is the topics, which is like, what are their questions, concerns, curiosities about those things? And the type is your distribution. And that's generally, again, you hark back to the audience research that you've done, you'll know exactly how to get in front of your audience. Now, in COVID-19, what's going to change is the first 2 T's, the themes and the topics. Because suddenly the things that are interesting for your audience are suddenly shifting and moving around. And the second part is topics. So what are their questions, concerns, and curiosities? So that's generally, from a content perspective, the 2 things that I would look at, structuring it that way. And then your audience research, your own social channels. Google Trends gives you a huge amount of insight in terms of what audiences are looking at and things like that. But I would say, from a content perspective, being able to look at the themes that your audience is interested in, and then breaking each theme down into the topics of distribution. And then you can scatter that through a content calendar that you have. And the type of content that you have is basically the distribution. And that won't necessarily change at all. It'll essentially be, your own social pages, your blog pages, your email, your distribution of how your content kind of gets out will remain the same. The way that you present that information may change. So you might start doing video content because you've got more time up your sleeve now, as opposed to doing single still images supporting a bunch of text.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome advice there. I like your 3 O's and your 3 T's, and be nice
Make
to
it simple. Make it
get a
simple.
blog. Can you get a blog post out so we can share that with everybody? I think that's good. If
I can.
people
Yeah, yeah.
talking about content.
We've got a little template I can share with you, and it's basically a
Yeah.
template that we work through with all of our clients, and it's basically an A3 piece of paper. It's all split up into grids, and you work the 3 O's down one side, do your audience and your brand on the other, and you've got your 3 T's on the rest, and you've got your plan on the page.
Awesome. So if you can share that, that'd be great. We'll share it with folks as well.
Sure.
So we talk about, spending more if you can spend more. I just want to turn it back now to if you're a small business, you've got a tight budget. I don't know what a tight budget is, but just say you've got a grand to spend on paid media. You're going to do something on paid media for a grand. How would people best spend that? Let's say they've done their strategy, they've done all that part, so they kind of know who they're talking to and the content that they're going to put out there. How would you suggest they do it? Like, would it be a channel choice, or how would you think that they go about it to get the best return?
It's a funnel choice. When you've done your audience research, the consumer funnel, I always use the example of cars, and everyone no matter what it is that you purchase, you go through this process of awareness, consideration, preference, acquisition, purchase, and then loyalty. So awareness. Am I aware of your brand? I could name 20 car brands. Porsche, Ferrari, Volvo, Audi, Mazda. In terms of brands that I consider suitable for myself, I've got a wife and a 10-month-old son. Like, I'm not going to buy a Ferrari. So there's probably about 5 or 6 brands in there that I would consider. Which of those 5 or 6 brands do I prefer? I've probably got about a choice of 3. And then finally acquire, I'm going to purchase one. So that customer funnel of awareness, consideration, preference, and acquisition, you find that out in your audience research. So in your strategy, you'll know exactly what % of the market is aware of you, consider you, prefer you, and acquire you. And then once you've got that, you'll be able to see what your conversion rate is through those pieces of the funnel. And top of funnel activity, it's got very broad, but it's got slower effects and big paybacks, and that's your brand activity. Your bottom of funnel activity it's got narrower but earlier effects and smaller paybacks, but it's more immediate. And depending upon where the issue is in your funnel is dependent upon where you go with media. So for example, there are certain channels that are great for awareness. TV commercials are great at driving awareness. They're pretty shit at driving acquisition. And that's why they do them, because they know that they want to keep their awareness up. They know that if someone's aware of my product, there's a pretty good chance that they're going to consider us, that they're going to prefer us, and they're ultimately going to buy us. And what I would say is work from the bottom up. So, look at that funnel, look at what your conversion rates are between them, so where each segment within your market is actually dropping off. And if you've got a really high drop-off rate, like you lose 80% of your customers between, acquisition and consideration, well, you know that you need to do a fair bit more in acquisition. And so I'd be putting that $1,000 in there. So the first thing I would do is make sure I know where my funnel is and what the audience breakdown is there. And the second thing is I would look at what kind of media I use. And generally in media, we talk about owned media, paid media, and earned media. Owned media is media that you own. It's things like your Facebook page, your email list, your website. Paid media is things like your Google ads, your Facebook ads, it buys you reach, it's TV channels, it's out-of-home advertising, anything that you pay somebody else for to put your message on and get eyeballs. And then earned media is, virality. It's the amplification of media as well. So things like PR is earned media. And I would say, especially for small businesses, and we work with a lot of small businesses, we work with a lot of brands on paid media, but I would always say the first thing that you've got to absolutely nail is your own media. And the reason for that is because you're not paying anyone. You're not paying Facebook, you're not paying Google, you're not paying Channel 9, you're not paying own media to get a massive billboard. You basically can control the narrative. You can control the publishing platform that it's put out on. So I'll make sure that all of my social channels are up to date. I make sure that if I'm doing blogs that they're all up to date. I make sure my email list is current. And I'll be focusing the money on there and making sure that those are tight. And then once they're tight from an owned media perspective, then I know that I can go out and do paid media.
Yeah, that's a good comment, because again, like, people can invest there with a minimum budget. They can invest their own time and probably have more time now than they would normally during all of these isolation times that we're kind of going through. Um,
Just on that as well, one other thing I would say is that when you look at owned media, a lot of brands, especially in COVID-19, are shifting to an e-commerce model. So they're shifting things onto their website. And if you've got a 1% conversion rate on your website, if you start driving traffic to there, you're better off saving that money, investing in some conversion rate optimization or improving your website. Speak to some designers and developers to come in and basically improve your conversion rate from 1% to 2% or 3%. Because then the paid media that you put out there is going to do such a better job of actually converting to an end customer that you need.
Yeah, great advice. Just to finish up with, then let's look at platform. So regardless of budget, if it's tight or you have some money, what are some of the tips that you're finding in terms of conversion, say on Facebook? What's working on Facebook more so now?
Video, definitely
Video,
video. I'll be trying to get video content out as much as possible. We know the video increases conversion rate 3.3 times more than it does over a static image, and that's a blended approach from most of our clients. And within video, I'll be looking at 6-second and 15-second videos, and definitely putting subtitles on them as well. What we're finding is that the short form video from a 6-second and 15-second is getting much more visibility, and people are not necessarily watching videos with sound on. So if you've got a VO or you've got some content that's being spoken in there, it's not just background music, make sure that you've got subtitles working on that at the moment. So Facebook, I would definitely say video. Canvas ads are really good. Once you've got video assets, if you make canvas ads, they will essentially build a mini micro site on platform for you. It's a really engaging experience for a consumer. It does a lot of heavy lifting for your top of funnel activity, and it really helps bring people on board. And then from a search perspective, Google ads are great. We've got a beauty client at the moment where their cost has remained flat from March and April, and in the last 30 days, with the same cost, we've increased clicks by 75% and conversions have increased by 104%. That's with the same cost. So it's about trying to fish with the fisher and understanding exactly where your audience is, and once they are there, capitalizing on that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's kind of Facebook and Google search. Just incidentally on the Facebook one, like as you mentioned before, the new format for ads, where you can create these microsites, is obviously aiding conversion because you're keeping people in platform.
Yep.
Which obviously helps with engagement.
And things like lead gen forms on Facebook, very easy for people to conduct. So we do a lot of work with B2B businesses. I think we work with a couple of yours as well, Tony, in our partnership. But lead generation forms on Facebook, if you're a business that's after leads, that's a huge resource I would use. It almost avoids your website. If people are interested in through an ad, and you've got enough information on that ad, either through a canvas ad or a carousel or a video that explains your benefits, people can essentially drop their details in with 1 or 2 clicks, and then it basically stores it in the platform. And then from there, you export it and contact them, and Bob's your uncle.
So what about the other platforms? So that, obviously Facebook, Google search. If we took there's obviously LinkedIn, there's Instagram, Pinterest, and then also TikTok. I mean, I know TikTok, someone was saying actually the other day, I was talking to them, obviously we all know TikTok is very much in that real young generation, but because people are spending so much time at home, the audience has extended a little bit more to people trying to find TikTok. So what would you say about those other platforms?
Look at them, invest in them. Definitely manage them from an own perspective before you start putting paid budget behind them. So for example, TikTok is huge at engagement. It's not going to drive sales. But if you're looking at creating video content that engages with your audience, that pushes them from a top of funnel, middle funnel down, so that when they see an offer, they can capitalize on that. I would say those platforms are perfect for that. Snapchat, exactly the same. Don't just dip your toe in the water though. And the one thing I would say is that make sure the success of those platforms is being measured against the objective. So don't measure your TikTok activity against sales or leads, because that's not what it's going to do. You've got your strategy in place. If your strategy says that our audience is on these platforms and they're acquiring content, in order for us to reach our brand objectives and our marketing objectives for the year, go hell for leather. If you've done your research and your strategy is basically saying, we need to try and drive acquisition, then just focus on the channels that drive acquisition. Don't be distracted. And I would say with a strategic decision. Make sure that your strategy is in place and hold the course on it, and don't deviate too much from that. Because as soon as you start going and doing a lot of tactical execution without strategy, I think it was Sun Tzu that said, tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. So definitely, I would say, look at the platforms as long as they abide by your strategy. LinkedIn is a really good platform for B2B businesses. We get a lot of business clients that need lead generation through business owners and specific to job titles. So rather than a direct-to-consumer model, LinkedIn, you can get really targeted advertising based on things like someone's job title, the company that they work with. LinkedIn just released that feature, I think it was about 2 weeks or so ago, where you can now target companies directly. YouTube is great at driving awareness. Again, it's not going to drive conversion and bottom of funnel activity, but a 6-second bumper ad, there's so much you can say in 6 seconds, and you can get really creative with that video. And likewise, it's repurposing content. So that 5 or 6 second video you've got on Facebook, there's no reason why you can't shift that onto YouTube and just drive your brand awareness through there.
Yeah. Awesome conversation, mate. And I think, your comment before about a saying, and another one that I've, often heard, and often that they say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, some of the key takeaways from today's couch session have been, use strategy, use your own resources to get your whole office in order first, because you're not paying anybody to do that. And no one knows your product better than you know your product and your service. And then do that research and that strategy planning to understand who's the audience you really want. And then to Dave's point, kind of test and measure across stuff. This is the best time, I think, in the world to be doing A and B testing right now. Trying a little bit here, trying a little bit there. It's almost like fishing. Like you're just going to be putting a few bits of bait out there and see which ones nibble. And then they're the ones that you need to go on. And stuff you may have never tried before, now's the time to do it.
Absolutely. I think when we're on quotes, I saw a great one. We've got this little hamburger joint up the road called Pirate Pete's at round corner. And I walked past there the other day on the way to my morning coffee, and they had this really amazing quote in there. And it's so pertinent for the moment. And the quote was, I'm going to paraphrase it, but it was basically saying, you can't control the wind, but you can adjust your sails. And I thought, with everything COVID-19 going on, it's so pertinent and relevant. There's a lot of stuff going on out there at the moment. We're in the middle of a storm. You can't control what you can't control, but what you can control, do. Yeah,
and I think to that point as well, like it's so important for people. I know the word's used a lot, and I sort of think about it before I use it. But the word of pivoting the business, a lot of people are talking about. But the thing I like about the pivoting part of it, and relates to our conversation before, is that if you're pivoting your business, your brand is still contained. Your foundation of your business is still right. Because to your point earlier on, it's not about today. Like we might be doing stuff today to get us through these tough times, and they will end. All crisis ends at some point. But how will our business look after this? What will we have done to our brand and our positioning if we get too reactive and we forget about that pivot and go off and do something completely different?
Yeah, I think the pivoting is really interesting as well. We early on in this pandemic, I sat down with all the staff, and we were all working from home by this point for a couple of days, and I can distinctly remember saying that there is a time now where none of you or none of us are going to be doing stuff in our JD. Everyone's doing stuff different, and everyone is pivoting as the business pivots. And it's just about, again, finding the opportunities, finding the hidden opportunities. So we've got, our designer is now running social media reports. Our performance media marketing manager is doing out-of-home brand planning. Ella in the team is now running organic social media community management. So people are taking on different roles in the business as those opportunities come up. And I think, we're working harder and faster than ever before.
Yeah. I think so. I am too. I mean, it's surprising we got time to sit on the couch now, mate. We should be out.
I know. I'm going to have to knock off and go do some work now.
That's it. Not time for another coffee and then get stuck into it. But thanks so much for joining us on the couch, Dave Levett from Murmur.
No worries. Thanks, Tony. Thanks for having me.